As we're going to cross over now to a man who was both ambassador to Israel and to Egypt, former U.S. diplomat Daniel Kurtzer. Thank you for being with us from Washington.
My pleasure.
What was your reaction when you heard that Joe Biden was going to Israel?
Well, it's quite unusual for an American president to travel to a war zone which doesn't involve American troops. So this is a very credible and important signal of solidarity, as your correspondent said, to both the Israeli people, but also to Israel's enemies and adversaries, that America does stand fast with Israel. But it also provides an opportunity for the president to follow up on the critical diplomacy that's been conducted by Secretary of State Blinken, Secretary of Defense Austin. We now have the head of the Central Command, the U.S. Central Command in Israel, General Kurilla. And so the president now can, on the ground, talk to Israeli leaders and to Arab leaders very directly about all of the important items on the agenda.
So let me ask you about logistics here, because as you know, Americans don't travel light when the president goes abroad. Everything, including the limousine that he drives. So how does it work when this is decided at the last minute, as you say, in a war zone?
Well, it's a big challenge for the what's called the advanced teams. They're clearly either in the air already or on the ground preparing the visit as much as possible. It's been facilitated by the presence of the Secretary of State and his team, but this carries a lot of complex logistics. As you mentioned, the cars, as well as large staff. The President is not going to spend a lot of time on the ground, I assume, nor will he spend a lot of time on the ground in Amman meeting with the Arab leaders, which means that there's going to be a lot of time on the plane going back and forth from Washington.
Let me just bring in Iris Makler on this. Iris, how do Israelis feel? Are they excited he's coming, or are they saying, well, this isn't the right day to be welcoming guests like that?
No, they're excited he's coming. You know, the outpouring of support from Washington for Israel during this, well, the 11 days since that attack at the Gaza border is so reassuring to them. You know, they heard from Joe Biden before they heard from their own prime minister. His approach, in the classic Joe Biden approach, was more empathetic than the approach from their own prime minister. So I think there's a great feeling of that they are reassured. He's a reassuring presence. They're grateful. As there should be, I suppose. It's such an amazing signal of support. You know, they're also sending, he's just announced 2,000 troops to the Middle East in addition to the aircraft carriers. So there's definitely a feeling that Joe Biden has Israel's back, and no one says this is the wrong time to say that.
Daniel Kurtzer, that's been said a lot in the last 10 days, how in Israel right now, Joe Biden is more popular than Benjamin Netanyahu. How does he manage that aspect of it while he's on the ground?
Well, he's a consummate politician and speaks from the heart and speaks very directly. He likes to actually hug people, and so you're going to see a lot of human contact. This is going to be a pretty stark contrast to the prime minister, who's under tremendous pressure in Israel for the situation leading up to this conflict. And so Biden, in a sense, is the right person to do this trip. My guess is there will be some contact with families of those who've been, with relatives who've been killed or mobilized or hostage, because he connects so well to human beings. And on the backdrop of what he has said publicly and the messages of support that he sent publicly, this is fated to be an extremely successful trip. What we won't know is how successful the private diplomacy is. We're just hopeful in that regard.
And how it will play back home. His main challenger for re-election, Donald Trump, accusing him of being too soft on this issue. Is Joe Biden going to be reassuring, particularly as he is 80 years old and people are watching for signs that perhaps he's tired when he goes on these trips?
Well, you're going to see him bounce. He'll bounce off the plane. He'll be alive and alert, and he'll be very, very active. He's coming to Israel at a point where Donald Trump has made some very serious missteps, blaming Netanyahu for some failures and distancing himself from Israel, which it really makes no sense politically or in terms of realism in politics. So Biden is going at a great time for himself. Congressional support is guaranteed. There's a resolution in the House of Representatives waiting to be put forward if they ever elect a speaker that has over 400 signatures, which tells you that bipartisan support for Israel is as strong, if not stronger than ever.
So Daniel Kurtzer, that the support for Israel is strong. We've heard about this call-up of 2,000 extra U.S. military personnel this Tuesday, just in case, as Iris Mockler was saying. This is with an eye towards Iran. But still, that support for Israel, how will it play on the next leg of his trip when he travels to Jordan and meets with the Palestinian president, with the Egyptian president?
You know, in one respect, there's always been some concern that the United States is pivoting away from the Middle East, diminishing its support. And so the kind of active diplomacy and the military deployments are sending very important messages to the region that we're not going anywhere, that we're here because Israel and the Middle East are important to the United States. I think the conversation specifically with President Abbas will be difficult. You saw the other day that Abbas criticized Hamas, and then the Palestinian News Service removed that criticism from its publication. The president will want to, on the one hand, to tell Abbas that we would like to see a strengthening of the Palestinian Authority, a resumption of contacts with Israel, a strengthening of our relation with Palestinians. But he will also want Abbas to know that we expect the Palestinian Authority to make clear that Hamas does not represent Palestinian national interests.
Won't the conversation be harder, though, with Egypt's president? Egypt, which has told both the Americans and the Europeans, you're effectively asking us, after not fixing the Middle East peace problem, of taking in the Palestinians and turning it into our problem.
Well, I don't think the president will see it that way, and I think he will push back against any such argument. The reality is that the peace process before this latest horror had not succeeded for lots of reasons, some of them being American policy, but most of them laid at the footsteps of the two parties and outside supporters. So the president is going to want to make clear that it remains a national interest of the United States to advance toward peace. We are an ally of Egypt, and we expect to continue to build a strong relationship.
What's he going to demand of Egypt? What's he going to demand of the Egyptians? To take in Palestinians?
No, I think that's off the table. I think Secretary Blinken made that clear. What we would like to see Egypt do is open up the Rafah crossing for foreign nationals and Palestinians with foreign passports, and therefore to facilitate humanitarian support coming in through that crossing. I think in that respect, he'll get a positive answer from the Egyptians, but logistically, it's not going to be easy. The Rafah crossing has been hit by some fire, and therefore there are some things that need to get done before you can open up that crossing.
Yeah, Iris Mockler, again, you were saying how there is something in the works when it comes to opening that crossing.
That's what is being reported here. I mean, I don't think you can get a promise of billions of dollars in aid, in addition to all the aid you're already getting, you know, in case there's an attack from the north, and not have to give something back. And it's quite clear what that something in the first instance that America wants is, and they don't want a massive humanitarian catastrophe on their hands in Gaza. And, you know, I don't think it would help Israeli interests either, by the way, and it certainly would be the worst thing of all for Palestinians. So yes, I think that's the reason it's being reported as something that's being brokered at the moment. I don't know how much longer. We have been watching this since yesterday morning, so that's 36 hours. I don't know how long it will take them to broker, but they've certainly got a very high-powered team here trying to do it.
Daniel Kurtzer, one final question for you. You talked about Joe Biden probably meeting with the families of hostages, lots of dual nationals. And the U.S. has been keeping numbers close to its chest. It's not saying how many hostages there are. There's speculation it could be the highest number since the Iran hostage crisis of 1979. If that is the case, how does Joe Biden handle it? Is this going to dog him all the way to his re-election bid?
Now, there's significant differences between this and 1979. That was a bilateral issue between Iran and the United States. In this respect, in the current crisis, Israel has the primary responsibility, given the fact that our nationals were in Israel at the time and are now being held hostage. It will call for continued, extremely close coordination and cooperation. I think the United States at very senior levels will continue to watch this carefully. We'll offer whatever help we can provide, but we will be looking to Israel as the primary player with presumably a significant amount of U.S. input.
And if the Israelis privately tell them, look, it's tragic, but we got to sacrifice those hostages in order to attain our military objectives?
I think all of us are mature enough to understand that the objective of decapitating Hamas and destroying its infrastructure and capabilities is a supreme strategic objective. Israel, for its own reasons, but also for purposes relating to our hostages, will do whatever it can to be careful not to harm the hostages. Frankly, at this point, there's not much more we can do. I think there will be pressure that the president will ask to be put on the Arab leaders to tell Hamas to at least release foreign hostages, women and children.
Daniel Kurtzer, so many thanks for joining us from Washington.
My pleasure.
Thanks as well to France 24's Iris Mockler reporting for us from Jerusalem.